Good to go.
Good to go. Okay, well, welcome everybody to our first ever Zoom community board meeting. I don't know whether it's exciting or frightful. I really don't know yet. So we'll just wait and see and plough through as best we can. So we haven't got any apologies, except maybe the mayor.
The mayor obviously can't attend, but we don't need to write it in the minutes.
Okay, that's okay. And I haven't heard anything from Marilyn, so I'm assuming she's going to come in shortly, hopefully. Okay, now has anybody got any declarations of interest in relation to items on the agenda? You can shake your heads if you like. Okay, fine. Okay, well, we've got no public speaking time, so that's cool. Where are we? The agenda's all over the place. I actually went and got one printed off at the library this morning, which is actually quite good. So public speaking time is any leave of absences? No. I may have one next month because my daughter's due to have a baby next month. So I will be going to that, which will be rather exciting. Okay, now where are we up to? So do we want to do the grant application now?
Do you have
there's only the one. Has everybody read it? And has anybody got any problems with it? I think it's actually, it's pity it's not the end of the year because I would like to have given them some more money than the $500. I think it's a very worthy cause.
Cam would like to talk. If you could
go for it, Cam.
Hello. I don't have any issue with the $500 going to the food banks. They do a fantastic job and they work very, very hard. The only slight misgiving I had with the application was that the $500 was going towards car costs, and that's quite difficult to take that away from personal car use. I would have preferred if it was something like stationery or direct costs to the food pantry rather than vehicle running expenses. But otherwise, you know, that's getting into logbook country.
I can't find. Damn, I haven't got that one printed out. I've got everything else printed out.
The appendices.
They had other things on that list as well, though, didn't they? Not just car costs, wasn't it?
So Cam, when you're looking at this grant, the board can choose to discuss how they grant it. So they could say, actually, we grant you $500, but with the grant, it can be spent on administration, and you don't want it spent on petrol or car.
I'd be more than happy to word it.
Later. Councillor Coates, you had a question, and then it was Shelley.
Thank you, Samara. Look, I had a similar question with regards to Cam, and I'm just bringing up just to clarify, it's not the food bank, it's the food pantry. I think Cam initially mentioned the food bank. It's a very informal arrangement that is done locally. Fortunately, I've seen a lot of activity about this on social media, on the Sunny Ōtaki page. So having known that, I actually have no problem with what they do. I think they do a fantastic job in distributing food to obviously people who need it. But I'm torn in the sense of that, even though it's a small amount of $500, we still have kind of rules and guidelines that we adhere to and expect others to. So for example, I know we haven't granted funding to the community patrol before for things like vehicle costs and so forth. So look, I'm happy to support it, but I think we just need to note that as a board publicly, and also consider that when receiving applications. This is to an individual, and it is, as Cam has said, for fuel costs and so forth. So I'm not too sure whether staff have any comment on that. I note in their application there is, as Samara has said, there is numerous things. I mean, $19,200 in costs that they have itemised down. But other than seeing it on social media, we've got no other oversights in terms of, you know, the financial activity and so forth. So I think it's a good cause. It's a small amount, but I think there's a responsibility to at least raise that concern. It is a little bit loose in terms of the way that we distribute funding if we approve it.
Hey, Chris, are you happy that Shelley asked the question and then
Yeah.
I may come back with a response at the end?
Okay, no, cool.
Shelley, if you want to unmute yourself.
You know, mine's just the same. We've had this before where we have given out money for petrol and then we kind of pulled that back. That was early on when I was on the board and required people to have a different purpose for the money. And I have no idea who the food pantry services and how it works and who uses. I'm sure it's a good initiative, but yeah, after discussions in the past, it seems that's a dodgy one to me.
Yeah, no, I've seen good reports on them. So I mean, they're like James on social media mainly, but you know, there was other things that they did, not just the petrol though. There was other things that they needed the money for. But I can't. The library didn't print that page out, and I can't find it on my phone. So
when the application came in, I spoke to a couple of our staff in the Connected Communities area. They know about the service and commented on that they'd heard good things about them, but obviously hearing in the community. Also, I was reading in the application that you could, if you chose to as a board, you could with the application say that the community board grant for obviously stationery, and they talk about vegetables and stuff, because obviously just stocking that up, if you choose to do that, that can be stipulated in the grant as well.
Yeah, because that's what I thought the money should go towards, some food to stock up the pantry, things that they haven't had donated that they would actually need to have.
Yeah, and being mindful that you do only have you've got 3 more meetings till the end of the financial year as well.
So I mean, and if we gave them the grant and said it had to be used on food, well, they could actually supply receipts for that anyway to prove that they'd done that they hadn't used it for petrol. And
that's what they do with the accountability report. So I always, when I get an accountability report, just double check that what the money's been used for is being spent, and marrying up, just because we get audited through council for sometimes some of our grants as well. So we need to make sure that that's, you know, someone's asked for A and they've got A, and not asked for A and got C. So yeah. Shelley's got a question. Shelley, if you'd like to unmute yourself.
So just with regard to the petrol, is it to get to the shop and get supplies and take them back to the pantry? And what is the petrol actually for?
If memory serves me correct from what I read, because I haven't got it here, it was actually delivering as well, because they deliver a lot of the food. They actually deliver it to people, to families.
So if that's a service they're doing voluntarily, maybe we could just ask them to keep us a log for a month of what mileage they're doing, so that we can, as a board, say, well, you know, this validates, because if it is voluntary, then they're using their own petrol. We might just, you know, just say to them, can you just let us know how often you go out and where do you go and where do you deliver? I don't know, just a suggestion.
Well, if we take the petrol thing out of it and make the grant exclusively for produce, then if they have to use produce and that's it.
Yeah, and administration costs if you wanted to add that in as well. If you just wanted to make sure, hold on for a second, I'm just admitting Ian, he's just in the waiting room about to come in, just to let you know. And after Shelley, you've finished, Cam had a question.
So just mindful too, though, that if it is voluntary and they're spending quite a lot of money on their petrol, then it is good to support that. It just would be nice to know how much and how many deliveries, even, you know, maybe for the end of the year, that if we do have extra money, we could support them some more, because it is a pretty vital service probably to some people, but none of us have any idea what they're delivering. Are they delivering 1 parcel a week, or are they delivering 10? And if it is voluntary and they're using their own petrol, then it's probably pretty valid. But That would be nice to know.
I don't, does anyone know if they're connected to that free food pantry that operates? Are they part of that? Nobody knows that. Because
They are the free food pantry, aren't they?
Yeah, well, that's what I heard. That's what I thought it was when I read the application. And they're doing a boomer job, you know. So,
Cam's got a question too, Chris. Oh, hi, Ian.
Hi, how you doing? Oh, sorry, I just realised I'm next to you.
He's speaking Dalek.
yeah.
On the back, you about the free food one.
Ian, your connection is terrible.
Sam's right, you sound like a darling.
It says his bandwidth is
Carry
low.
on.
Cool. Cam, did you have a question?
Yeah, just looking at the figures. So these people spend over $19,000 a year, and they get in about 2,800. So they're running at a $16,500 loss, which
19,000 or 1,900?
They get $19,000 they spend, and they get in 2,800 approximately. So they're running at a $16,500 loss. So $500 is not, not going to erase too much of that, but it will help. But I mean, they spend $8,000 on disposables, $5,000 on stationery, and $1,000 on power. And again, the power is like petrol. It's hard to justify which is personal, which is not. So we can very easily do disposables or stationery, and $500 will go quickly, and they'll be able to provide us with receipts for that.
Yeah.
So I don't think I think Shelley's idea is great if we could actually see what they're doing as a service to the community, but maybe they could do that independently, and whether there is other help we can get them.
Yes, perhaps suggest that if we do approve the grant, perhaps when Samara writes and sends it to them, perhaps suggest that they do what Shelley has suggested, and we may be able to help them later on in the year with something else if we had.
Yeah, I think Shelley's idea has
a lot
merit.
more information. Because those applications actually don't lend themselves to putting in a lot of detail.
So are we happy that we say that it's for stationery or vegetables or something, the disposables, but just tell them we'd like to actually know their amount of deliveries just from the point of view of potentially supporting them in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And then they will supply receipts for what they've purchased, and it'll be all fine.
So will we need that as a motion, Samara?
So it's in the grants report. So hold on 2 seconds while I bounce back to the report. And just you would have noticed this meeting that we've got a new council report. So the report that you normally read is a little bit different. So yeah, it's under A in your report that the Ōtaki Community Board approves a community grant of whatever to the free food pantry to assist with, and then I can stipulate what you would.
What is to be spent on?
Yeah.
Shelley had did you have a question, Shelley?
Oh.
Are you there, Shelley?
She's frozen. Frozen in time.
Just at $19,000, you actually know what they do and how much.
Yeah.
Oh.
Sorry, you cut out at the end, Shelley. You were just wanting sort of with all the stuff they offer for that 19,000.
Oh, she's gone.
Oh, we've lost her.
Oh dear. Okay.
I'll
For
keep
that
an eye
nine,
out for her coming back.
yeah, they provide some meals. They provide a whole range of food and vegetables, bread, anything they can buy or get given. They then basically hand that out to people that come to their door. So they control it so that people can't just come in and strip the pantry. So they do chat to the people that come up. But as I said, they are non-judgmental. They don't really ask, why do you need this food? They just help people out. And there are people that need it.
So Chris, you've got Councillor Coates wanting to speak and Janice as well. So Councillor Coates, if you'd like to unmute yourself.
Thanks, Mara. Look, just listening to all the other community board members' comments, I'm a little bit worried we're trying to crack a walnut with a sledgehammer. There's no doubt that they do some great work within the community. We've heard from the connected community teams that they regard as doing great work. I'm looking at the moment at their Ōtaki Free Food Pantry Facebook page. You can see the level of, food going in and out, the number of items. They also post on Sunny Ōtaki. There's a lot of people donating items. We're talking about $500. I think for me, if they were to come back, we sort of make it clear to them the message that the board appreciates the work that they do within the community, helping those in need, that we do have some kind of rules and guidelines for grants. And if they were to look at coming back in the future, that we may need a little bit more information sort of validating the work that they do. We know from what we've seen that they do great work. There's no doubt they've got 2 fridges there. Lots of people use the service. I don't think we should make them jump through a whole lot of hoops and keep logbooks and so forth. Obviously, if they want to come back for more funding in the future, then it might be that they provide some more. Like I said at the start, I've got some hesitation over the nature of the application, but because I know from what I've seen what they do in the community, I have no problem supporting it. The $19,000 and all that, I've got no idea, how all that is spent other than what they've put in the application. But I think the fact is they've asked for $500 and they give out far more than that in food and run some fridges with power and so forth. So I think we should support it and then just give them some advice around any future applications.
Thanks, James.
And I'm happy to do that, Councillor Coates. Obviously, go back if you want to stipulate that $500 you give them is for not for, if you want it to go, if you're happy with whatever they want to use it for, or if you just want administration and like fruit and veggie costs, and then I can obviously work with them down the track if they reapply again.
Yeah, good.
Does anyone else have any other comments?
Then Janice?
Her question was asked by Councillor Coates.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So I don't know if you want to, if you're all happy with me giving them or saying they've got $500 from the board, and just saying this maybe just for administration costs, sort of steering away from petrol costs, and maybe working with them down the track to like let them know if they document like how many Ks they do in a month, that all that information helps the next time you come round to. Yeah.
Oh, that'd be good. Thanks a lot, Samara. That's very
I don't know if you want to do that recommendation, Chris, and if everyone's happy, they press the green tick in the reaction so we get a vote.
Okay then. Well, oh gosh, I've disappeared again.
Oh, now you're muted, Chris.
Okay, I'm trying to get that other little thing up. I move that we accept that grant application. Could I have a seconder for that, please? Shelley. Okay, all those in any discussion, any further discussion? Okay, all those in favour, just put your paw up. Okay.
Everyone happy?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay. Carried. Moved. Finished. Carried. Right. I'm still trying to work my way. Okay. So now we've done the application. Members' business. We're a little bit out of order, but that's all right. Okay. Members' business. Who would like to go first? Shelley, I know you've got something to bring up. because you sent us all a email. Would you like to cover that now?
Yeah, I just sent it to you and Samara, actually. I
Oh,
haven't had
okay.
any information back from council, although it's all been closed, about what was left to be done at the Civic Theatre. But I asked Barney, who's the president, about what they thought was left to be done. And obviously I know it's not going to be done in the next year or anything, but just to have a plan going forward. So he sent me they had a committee meeting the other night, and he sent me the list of stuff that they feel still needs to be done at the theatre. So I don't know if you can bring that up, Samara, or I can read it out.
Just read it out, Shelley. It'll be easier,
Okay.
I think.
So in order of priority for them was an accessible toilet, wheelchair accessible, wheelchair access to the theatre. I'm not sure if that might be at the front, maybe. Upgrade to the current toilets, because I understand they were just painted when it was done up. A new fire door on the western emergency exit, kitchen upgrade, ceiling above stage, because the rest of the auditorium was relined, but this is still in disrepair. And so I suppose they'll put that into an annual plan submission, and when we do our annual plan submission, we can just give a list based on their needs for some kind of planning over the next many years.
Okay, I'm
Has
just.
anyone got any questions?
So sorry, I'm just sending something to Marilyn.
So Shelley, with that list, at the last meeting in November, we provided an update around what had been done so far, or what had been completed with the Civic Theatre. And we talked about how I think the strengthening work and stuff and some of that other work would be encompassed, was planned in the 29-30 annual plan year. So I don't know if Janice has got any further information on that, but currently as it stands, it's not scheduled to start till 2029, 2030.
I haven't got any further information. That's what you were updated on at your last meeting is all I understand the situation to be.
Yeah, just these are things that probably can be ticked off over the next few years. And if they're in an annual plan and then a long-term plan, I suppose it's just a matter of working through them as they can. I think the accessible toilet or the disabled toilet was quite a priority for them, because I do have people who can't use those toilets because you have to step down to them. So I don't know how we work with them as a community board for the next annual plan, and then maybe into the long-term plan to help them out. Are we going to do, when do we need to have our annual plan submissions in by?
There's a workshop, is it this week or next week?
I'm working, so I can't go.
It's in my diary. I've got it in my diary anyway.
Do we have a date when annual plan submissions will need to be in?
I haven't seen
I
one
can
yet.
let Barney know that.
Do we have a date yet, Janice?
It's too soon in the process to know whether there will be consultation on the annual plan or not. That depends on whether or not substantive changes to what would otherwise be year 2 of the long-term plan are proposed, and councillors will start to get a sense of that from this week onwards.
No, thank you.
So just with regard to the players and their wish list, and everyone has a wish list, who would they then write to, apart from me, bringing it to the community board, to say, hey, you know, this is kind of our wish list.
But I guess as a leaseholder of a council facility, then their first port of call for any concerns that they have or opportunities that they see with the building should be their contact within the property team. So whoever they deal with on their lease is that would be the right avenue for them to use to bring this up. Obviously, how they then work with you as a board, if that's where you want to go, and what your advocacy would be, is a slightly separate issue. But as a leaseholder, they should be having a conversation with their landlord essentially to start with.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Right. Shelley, while you're there, do you have anything else?
Just no, but I do have a question.
Okay.
Do we have any update on what's happening with the boat club and their lease or their purchase or?
Nothing yet. No, I haven't heard anything. I've been talking to Trevor about it, and he's away now for about 6 months. So trekking around New Zealand with his caravan and his boat.
So does the council have any plan with them, Janice?
Sorry, just unmuting myself. I'm not aware. Obviously, there were a couple of months at the end of last year when I wasn't involved in Ōtaki matters, and I haven't received any updates. I can inquire of my colleagues, but potentially there are others on the call that know more than I do.
Right. Okay.
Chris, Marilyn's trying to speak and she hasn't unmuted, and Councillor Coates has got his hand up too, Chris.
Marilyn, you'll have to unmute. Okay, James, you go first, then Marilyn after James.
Just so I'm keeping it consistent, to go back to the discussion around the Ōtaki players. I put my hand up and then Ms McDougall commented with what I was going to say. Just need to be mindful that we're in year 2 of the LTP. I'm really just wanting to manage expectations. There is no decision yet or guarantee that we will be consulting or looking for additional items for year 2 of the long-term plan. So that is yet to be decided by the council, but it is certainly something that we've been discussing and that council staff have raised with us in terms of the work that goes into it, our financial position and the projected rates. So I just want to be open and upfront and honest with you that that discussion has occurred within a briefing within councillors and the staff around potentially not consulting and not seeking requests through an annual plan process unless it is within existing parameters or budgets. Is that fair to say, Janice? I know that you've covered it a lot, but I just wanted to make it really clear so that we are managing expectations. And then I had a comment to make about the boating club.
That is fair. I think that given that it is year 2 of the LTP, if there is no sense of a need for change amongst the councillors, then probably that would limit the degree to which the consultation process would happen. Yeah.
Now, Chris, do you want me to just touch on the boating club? I did have it in my
carry
report
on. Carry on while you've got the floor, James. It's easier than switching backwards and forwards to people.
Okay. So I have got it in my report back, which I emailed through a little bit late today to Samara and Janice, so they may not have had an opportunity to read it. As you all know, I've been involved in this discussion around the Ōtaki Boating Club since 2007. I spoke to Trevor today and reminded Trevor that the chair at the time, Andre Baker, and myself and other board members met with the boating club in the Ōtaki fire station to discuss their desire to have a boating club on the Ōtaki beachfront. So that's how long ago this discussion has been going. Over the last 15 or so years, that club has just been mucked around left, right and centre by council staff. I'm not usually that frank and blunt about it, but that is the reality of it. Without boring everyone with the history and the details, which I know the boating club has presented to the community board, a year and a half ago, I put a motion, which I've copied in my report back to you all. I put a motion to the community board. That motion was passed unanimously by the board, and then it went through the council process to be considered by the council, and it was supported at that committee too. Since then, for the last year and a half, council staff have gone round and round in circles. And to this day, we're no further ahead in bringing that council report back to the council for consideration around a lease or sale agreement for the boating club. To add insult to injury, staff have even suggested that the boating club talk to the surf club about potentially occupying or partnering with them And why that's ironic is because that was the original suggestion back in 2007, which the Surf Club rejected at the time. So I don't normally speak this strong about this, but it is embarrassing for me as an elected member. I've done literally everything that I can do as a councillor to push this along. I've spoken to numerous staff, group managers, and so forth around this issue. It has gone through so many staff. I have literally almost lost count, from Tamsin Evans all the way through to Mike Mendoza currently today. And so I do want to, we've got no process as a board to raise things sort of formally from a technical perspective. But Janice, I do want to raise it with you as a group manager and a member of the senior leadership team of council, that this isn't how we should do business, and it isn't how we should treat our community groups. And so I want to raise it with you as a, I guess, as a complaint. And I ask that you and the SLT look to resolve the situation with urgency, because this is, like I said, it's been going on since 2007. It's been 18 months since the board moved a recommendation for a report to come back to council. And like I said, from what I'm aware, we're no further ahead for that report to be prepared and considered by the council. And it's, to be frank, it's just simply not good enough. I do acknowledge that COVID has an impact on the staff, and I would accept that, although it hasn't been that staff haven't done anything. Quite the opposite. I'm aware that staff have done quite a bit in terms of covering old ground and raising things that have been raised previously. And there are other things that I could add, but I don't think I want to do that publicly. So I'll leave it at that. But Janice, I do want to raise that with you, and I hope that by the time we have our next community board meeting, we've at least got a report going to a council committee for consideration.
Thank you, James. That's very good. Yeah. Right.
Marilyn wanted to speak after James.
Okay, Marilyn.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Oh, thank you. I just want to apologise profusely. I was on an international training course that went a lot longer than I anticipated and didn't realise what the time was. So I do apologise for my lateness.
Right. Okay. Do you have any members' business you'd like to discuss while you've got the floor? Or I should say the screen?
No, not really. No.
It's been well.
Just that the Ōtaki Community Network Forum has kind of adjourned until things are a little bit more stable out there in the community. We're not having meetings right now. But yeah, that's really all. I know that the food bank were wanting a grant approved, but I don't think it came in on time anyway. So maybe for the next time, they need a printer urgently.
Okay.
No, I haven't received anything as yet for them.
Oh, that's interesting, because when she phoned me, she said to me, oh, how do I get it down to the office? And I said, I'll take it into the service centre in Ōtaki. And she was going to do it that day. And that was last week, mid last week.
No, I can. So that was the Ōtaki Food Bank.
Oh, okay.
That's cool. Chris, Shelley's got a hand up. Yep.
Sorry, what was that, Samara?
Oh, I was just Marilyn was just finishing off what she was saying, and Shelley's got her hand raised.
Okay, Shelley.
Yeah, so
I was going to ask, I think, if anyone was at the meeting in Te Horo the other night, the water flooding meeting, and if there's any feedback on that.
No, unfortunately, I couldn't make it. Something came up.
Cam and I were both there. It was well attended. James was there, Penny Gaylor was there, several people from Greater Wellington Regional Council and a couple from the KCDC. It was an opportunity for the locals to vent their frustrations, and they did that. They didn't hold back, and I think they were heard. There's a lot of frustration, and it was a good meeting for them to be able to let the powers that be know how they felt and the damages that had been done, and the ongoing processes of, you know, farmers losing paddocks and all that sort of thing. It's an economic issue as well, and people that are medically dependent trying to get their head around how, if they need an ambulance and they're flooded in for 3 days, how that's going to work and all that sort of thing. So yeah, it was a really good, positive meeting.
Shelley, your hand up.
I don't understand the issue really. So is this an issue that's become worse with the motorway expressway being built, or is it a long-term issue?
James might want to respond to this, but my understanding is that there's been a lot of silt washed down the Mangoni from up in the hills, which has brought the creek, the riverbed up. The sumps are not big enough and haven't been cleaned out. Is that right, James? And there's some remedial work to be done down there, and it seems it's a problem to clean the river out. So there's got to be resource consents and things like that go through. So no, it's not because of the expressway.
Just because Marilyn asked, and to clarify, and I appreciate you asking me, Marilyn, it hasn't been deemed that the sumps aren't big enough. The sumps, from what we gather, work effectively. Those that are installed, they're cleaned annually. Sumps are not as effective when the water table raises, all these flooding that fills the sump. So if you think of an underground sump, if it's full of water, the water's got nowhere else to go because the sump is already filled. So that in itself is sort of a separate issue to the settlement itself, as opposed to the flooding of the Mangoni. I should have gone first in my report back because I've covered all this. Chris, do you want me to cover that meeting in detail now?
Just cover your report back now, and then it saves time.
Well, I'll start on the Hote beach flooding, given that Shelley asked the question. So again, this issue spans a number of years. So it wasn't this last event that has raised this issue. And I was a community board member at the time. We've had previous flooding, and there's issues in Convent Road, Ringawati Road and Waitahu Valley Road have always also been areas of concern as well through there. And yes, the silt does play, I guess, a part in terms of the issue, but I wouldn't say it is the single contributing factor. From my limited understanding, the major problem is largely around the national policy statement around freshwater management, which changed the rules. So essentially any drain, stream, creek or river within the district or any other district within New Zealand has to be maintained in accordance to the national policy statement. So I was trying to think of an analogy the other day talking to a community member. If you think of the government or the police or NZTA creating road rules, so for example, your speed limits and so forth, you can't have a territorial authority that just decides to override those rules and create its own rules. For example, that in Kapiti you don't have to wear seatbelts. You can't have a bylaw or a rule that overrides a national rule that's in direct conflict with that. And the issue that Greater Wellington Regional Council have here is that they've got a community that wants them to basically clean out those rivers effectively, essentially with things like diggers and so forth, which is what we saw happen in the event. And from what firsthand people have said, largely resolved the issue on the day in terms of river flow, but that is non-compliant under the freshwater management, the national policy statement on freshwater management. So Graham Campbell, there was only one representative from Greater Wellington at the meeting, which was Graham Campbell. And then there was Penny Gaylor as a regional councillor. We had two representatives from KCDC, which was Sean Mellon and Mark Martin from KCDC, who are there to present from their side. And from our perspective, it was largely from a resilience perspective. The issue of the flooding is, to be blunt, largely a Greater Wellington issue. Everyone looks to council because it floods from there onto the road and the community and so forth. But from our perspective, if Greater Wellington were to manage that stream network more frequently and maintain it, then we wouldn't have to look at costly exercises like raising roads and so forth. So That being said, to be fair to Graham and his team, like I said, they are bound by a national policy statement, and that I imagine is frustrating for them as well. Graham Campbell did talk about applying for a resource consent, which I am interested and curious to see what comes of that, because again, I can't see how any resource consent can be in conflict with the national policy statement. So I remain cautiously optimistic to see what comes out of that suggestion from Graham and the team at Greater Wellington. There were a number of people there. I'd guess probably, I don't know, maybe 30 or so people there, noting it was under COVID restrictions and vaccination passes only, which were checked as we went in. And from a council perspective, I guess, because we are, as a community board talking about Kapiti Coast District Council, I had talked with Sean and the team prior to the meeting in the weeks leading up around what our response was. So essentially it is doing a review of the issues within the area, an independent review, then looking at what those issues are and what possible solutions there are. So for example, raising the road has been suggested. There has been talk of a bund along the edge of the Mangoni. We've also talked about potential emergency access in the event of a civil defence emergency. There's been talk about additional sumps out at Te Hote Beach. So all those things we will look at and consider, and some of them may or may not be effective. Sean's assured me that there's sufficient budgets and existing budgets, unless it is something expensive like raising the road or anything of considerable cost, which would become an LTP discussion. So I guess to be really clear, certainly what I'm hearing from Sean and his team is a very proactive attitude and response. And from what I'm seeing from Greater Wellington is a little bit concerning. But like I said, I think that they have got their hands tied to a degree. Graham Campbell made two comments that sort of stood out. One was that they didn't consider it a significant event, which was quite, well, there was certainly some eyebrows raised within the crowd when that was said. That was the first time in the 10 years that I've lived there that the area's been cut off for 3 days. So I'd say that was significant. And secondly, there was talk about the maintenance budget. Now, I recall when we did a walkover back in 2015 that the GW staff were asked that question and they said the budget was between 20 and 30,000. Sean thought it was a lot less, like under 10 or 15,000. The point is the budget is minuscule in council terms, but Graham Campbell did commit to coming back to the community and confirming what the maintenance budget is for that, for the Mangoni. Two last comments. One was that from what I can gather, there was no commitment to increase that budget. And secondly, there was talk about forming from Greater Wellington about forming a group to help assist Greater Wellington Regional Council in moving things forward. However, that didn't, there wasn't any sort of discussion or commitment to the end of the meeting around that. So it's something that we probably need to follow up. The community needs to follow up with Greater Wellington on. So I'm just looking at my notes. I think I've covered it all there. But it's, essentially the Mangoni itself is the major issue. There is some surface flooding out at the residential area at Te Hote Beach, and that is where council is looking at the effectiveness of the sumps and whether we can install another one or two or three sumps here, particularly around the Rodney Avenue area. But as Marilyn said, I think overall it was a fairly good meeting. People, the community largely behaved themselves and they had a good opportunity for their concerns to be heard.
Thanks, James.
Any questions? Just, I know I've said quite a lot there, but any questions in particular?
Anybody?
Around the flooding?
Chris, Cam's got his hand raised, but I'm not sure if it's a question.
I wasn't sure where we were sitting in terms of doing the member activities, but like Marilyn and James said, I was there as well. I was at that meeting as well. It was certainly interesting. There were certainly the farmers that were standing up and jumping, just saying, dig it out, dig it out, dig it out. But I understand where the regional council is coming from with the National Environment Standard for Freshwater Management, which is, trying to preserve waterways and swamps and bits and pieces. So there's a tension between, what the freshwater management and what the farmers want. So it's going to be interesting how that fleshes out. Certainly weeds or weed growth seem to be an issue in a number of the culverts, and even culvert size seem to be an issue. And those aren't easy fixes. One of the interesting comments from Graham was that what was interesting about the rainfall was that the rainfall was largely on the flat, which is unusual. It's normally up into the hills. And that's where I think James, you was talking about not a significant event, that it wasn't a huge amount of rain all in one go, but it was a very constant rain on the flat area for a number of days, which ended up waterlogging everything, because the actual Mangoni flows further up near the hills were normal. So that water was largely coming in from the flat areas, and driving around and observing all the lakes on people's properties, there was certainly a huge amount of water there. But it was, the meeting itself stayed relatively civil. I thought there was actually good potential for a few angry people to lose their cool, but they didn't, which was great. And so hopefully, something does come out of this, and that Greater Wellington can come back and do some maintenance that they're allowed to do. Graham was very hopeful about getting the community's support for his resource consent to clear the drains or do more clearance work. So we need to actually be communicating to the community so that they can put in their 10 cents worth when he wants to put his resource consent in.
Okay, thank you. Right, have you got any other members' business you want to speak on, Cam, before we move on to the next?
Yep. Well, was James, were you finished with your members'
James is
business?
finished.
I'm happy
Look, I haven't,
if you want
but
to keep going.
do you just want me to go ahead, Chris?
Yeah, carry on, James.
All right. So you'll all be aware that the representation review was completed and we had a final model selected. There was one appeal and 8 objections to the Local Government Commission. There were hearings last week, and I was asked at the last minute to step in on behalf of Mayor Guru, where we heard from the appealants. Most of the comments were around the Waikanae ward and the underrepresentation there, and the appealants raising questions or supporting the smaller ward option. I think the key point there is that the commission's had an opportunity to hear from the appealants, from the council, which was Councillor Holbrook, myself, Ms McDougall and other council staff. And now they've gone away to consider all of that, the proposal, the appeals, and so forth, and they'll have their decision out in April this year, which their decision is the one that we will have to run with. So we'll have to wait and see what they come out with. Ōtaki Gorge, Blue Bluff, as you may be aware, there's been another slip 150 metres inland from the existing slip. It was a real shame because the council staff were literally a day away from opening the new track that they had formed into the Forks. Because as a result of the new slip, they've got geotechnical experts that are assessing the area. And as a result of the second slip, they've sort of taken a bit of a step back, and now they're having a wider look at access to the Forks, looking at all the options, and then they will look at coming back with the report around, what those options look like. I may not have this figure right because it is just from memory, but from memory through our annual plan workshop, there is about 1.7 million, I think, that has been provided for in the long-term plan. I think it's in year 2 or 3 as a placeholder, and that will be dependent on the findings from the review from the experts. I'll get through these, and then at the end, if anyone's got any questions, we can just tail back to the topic. 3 waters, to be very brief, in my last report back, I'd tabled a matter of urgent nature with a request to meet with the minister. That request has indirectly been declined, and so as we're only just back from council, I'm not too sure what our action will be next. I've mentioned the growth strategy in my report back. I won't go into that now. The local alcohol policy, again, that is still in progress, but is subject to any possible delays due to COVID. Likewise with the Ōtaki youth space. So we've had a couple of key staff resign in the team that we're handling the Ōtaki youth space project. And I have raised my concerns with Janice around the importance of that project. And so staff are aware of our desire to get that project off the ground, and it will be subject to resources available and obviously any changes in COVID conditions. And the flooding I've referred to, and the boating club I've referred to. And lastly, just COVID, I actually went back and edited my report back, so I hadn't put anything about that. It's almost like we're used to living with it. But really just a plea to elected members to be aware that although it may not appear that the council staff are under pressure, that there is quite a lot of pressure on the organisation in responding to COVID and Omicron, as Ms McDougall has mentioned. Staff are now split in teams, with one team at home and one team at work, and that rotates week by week. And they've got to obviously take into consideration, if there is an outbreak, the impact on the work program. So for example, in the consenting team, if suddenly we don't have the same level of staff to look at building consents and so forth. So as the message has gone out to councillors, again, just to community board members, if it isn't important, if it isn't urgent, then I really encourage you just to hold off it and just be aware that staff are under pressure within the organisation. That's it from me. I have got an Elevate update, but I'm sure you want to hear from Cam and others, and I'm happy to cut back in again around Elevate Ōtaki if members want to have an update.
Right.
Oh, any questions?
No, none from me, James. That was a very thorough report. Thank you. Anybody else? Can't see any hands up.
Me.
Oh, you.
Well, actually, it's going to be pretty brief anyway. So in terms of activity, I spent a large part of the last year recovering from surgery, but all fine now. Went to the Te Horo Beach flooding meeting, also attended the growth and development meeting in council before everything went online. Very, very interesting in terms of the numbers and where they're going to go. And the fact that Ōtaki may be looking at 1,600 more houses in the next sort of 10 to 20 years, which will be significant. But hopefully that can be planned well and done well so that it benefits the community. But that has been about it. So nothing else exciting, sorry.
Thanks, Cam. Marilyn, have you got anything else? No. I've just went to my usual Friends of the Rotunda meeting and a couple of other bits and pieces. I went to the growth strategy briefing. Yeah, unfortunately I couldn't make the flooding one, but I might give Liz a buzz and get a copy of the minutes and just see what happened. But it sounds like it was a fairly in-depth meeting, which was good. Shelley, have you got anything else? Shall we move on? No? Okie dokie. Oh, that's good. Okay, so we've got confirmation of the minutes of the last meeting. I take those as read.
Yes, and I'm happy to put forward that they be accepted.
Okay, there's no matters arising from those minutes?
No.
Someone like to second that, please? Okay, Marilyn, thank you. Any discussion? Right, all those in favour, just put your paw up. Cool, thank you. Okay, passed. Okay, now we have, I haven't got Samara sitting here pointing out things to me. We've got matters under action, so we've got our action chart. Has anybody got anything to discuss on that rather than do it bit by bit? It's the usual things. There seems to be, is there anything come back, Samara, that we need to know, or?
I just want to say thank you, Samara, for sending out the road stopping information, but I haven't read it yet. Sorry.
I think I sent it out. I realised I sent it out twice.
Yes,
So,
I still haven't read it. Sorry.
that's all right. I had this horrible feeling when I was in the South Island. Oh my God, I haven't done it. So, but then I had. So,
doubly efficient.
So there's nothing really. Just in the last minutes that we had, the last meeting we had, I think there was a question in regards to what Shelley's just posted about the toilets at the pavilion. And I emailed the property team and got an update around that the council property team have engaged prior to Christmas heritage architect to carry out an assessment on the latest structural engineers report about the building structure. The building and structure had been rated at 44%, and it's got NBS, which I'm not sure what that means. But it says this has now been assessed and a meeting has been set on site to discuss various options as per the recommendations for the upgrade of the facility.
Just turn that off for a minute.
So that was the latest update I've had from the property team. Following on from that meeting, they will the property team will have more information to share. Chris, Shelley's got National Building Standard. Thank you.
Oh, that was Cam.
Yeah, he said NBS is National Building Standard.
Okay.
Shelley's got her hand up.
Shelley.
So I can't remember what the figure was that was allocated to the toilets. Can you remember what was it, James? Or
From memory, I think it was around $1 million.
so someone just made a suggestion, which I didn't think was too silly, and maybe we could look at it. That the building is redeveloped into something that would be more like a cafe or something like that, and that we put so it could be kept as it is an iconic building, but it seems to be a pain in the neck to upgrade it as toilets. But maybe we could rethink what its purpose is, because it would be cool to have a shop or a cafe or something out there and put in the toilets like down at the park and stuff. It's just a thought, we seem to be stuck on them being toilets, and if we had a different look and a different view, which we're not going to kind of look at that area until we have that beach redevelopment, which we can't. But actually, maybe we could, there would be less cost in making it something different and putting in toilets that were easier to maintain, cleaner, able to be locked. I'm not sure. It's just a thought.
I think James have a better idea on this than me, but I think it would be far more expensive to convert it into a cafe than actually do the toilets up.
I think the issue is more because there's been numerous approaches to council to put a cafe in there. Rusty from Ōtaki Beach was the last one to approach council. The issue is more the fact that it's a heritage building, my understanding. And so, even when Colin and I were working with Alison Law around doing a modest upgrade to the toilets back when Colin was alive, we very quickly came up against roadblocks because of the restrictions around the heritage aspect. And so hence why that didn't go much further at the time. And we even had funding then to do something as well. Look, I'm happy to be corrected, but that's my understanding.
That seems strange to me, because looking at Wellington at the old Taj toilets down the end of Courtney Place, that's a heritage building that they turned into a cafe. I don't know if it's still working as a cafe. And also the one at the end of Manners Street, they did the same thing. So, and they didn't seem to have any problem doing anything with those, and they're both heritage buildings.
Chris, you've got Cam with his hand up and Shelley with her hand up.
So with that 44% is 44% of the National Building Standard for earthquake proofness. That's the correct word. So if it was to be converted to somewhere where the public is going to be staying, and KCDC, for example, was the leaseholder, it would have to come up to something like 80%. So therefore, the redevelopment cost would be massive. So we could take over the surf club building, make that a cafe.
It all comes down to dollars and cents in the end, doesn't it?
Yeah, unfortunately.
Well, the pavilion toilets were actually the surf club building long ago, so they haven't always been toilets. So I don't know whether that affects the heritage status of it, but that was actually the surf club building when the surf club was open.
So you can swap them back, make it the surf club again.
Might have had toilets attached, but it was used as a surf club rooms.
Okay, right. I'm pleased to say that I've seen a few of the council flats in Ōtaki getting refurbed. I drive past a few of them most days, and there seems to be quite a bit of work happening with those. So that's quite exciting that that project seems to be moving along at a reasonable pace. And I've heard from a couple of people that are in the ones down Ōtaki Street that that's working well. One chap who was in one that hadn't been done was moved into a refurbished one. So that's really pleasing to see that they are actually starting to take that suggestion on board and moving, tenants that are already there into the refurbished flats. So other than that, I can't see anything else on here that the Hote Park signage, well, there's nothing further on that. And the Te Horo Beach Reserve funding, there's nothing, unless something's popped up in the interim. But there's nothing to add to any of these, Samara? Nothing's. No.
Did Shelley have her hand? Do you have your hand up for something?
Yeah, just with regard to the Hurutai signage, I know that nothing's gone forward, but will we be part of that planning, Janice? Because I feel there was kind of a different view of what we were wanting from us and from the council. It would be good to work together.
I'll bring it up with Mike Bendonsa, who's the acting GM in that space at the moment, and see if he can give you guys an update.
Yeah, I'm sure they wouldn't go ahead and do something without actually presenting a suggestion to the board first. Well, I hope they wouldn't anyway. And they certainly haven't in the past. They've always, with things out like that, they've always come to the board.
I just think it would be good to have a prior discussion before they have put work into it about what it was that we wanted as opposed to what they think we want. Because otherwise they're going to do a whole lot of work and plans and stuff. And we might go, oh, well, that's not actually what we were thinking about.
Well, I was sort of under the assuming that they would probably come to us first with basically some idea, and then seeing whether we like that or whether we wanted to change it or do something different. That's my feeling on it anyway. That perhaps we need to see what the budget is and what can be what can be done.
Chris James has got his hand up.
The previous group manager, before she finished with council, had pulled me aside after a council meeting and said that they wanted to catch up. I can't remember if it was with me or with the board or with all of us around the Hurutai Park, and then obviously sign, and then obviously that staff member has since moved on. So I'm sure Ms. McDougall will pass on to Mike the board's desire. But yeah, like I said previously, they had spoken to me about looking to engage with, I'm pretty sure it was all of us, around that sign itself. And just as a side note about the pavilion, just because I'd like to be accurate, what I told you was to the best of my knowledge. I've just been searching while you guys have been talking, and I can't actually find the pavilion in the historics register. But again, that is my recollection that staff have advised me on. So, but like I said, I can't find anything quickly online that actually states that it's a historic building or on the historics register. But that's certainly been the advice that I thought staff had given me at the time.
Thanks, James.
So, Chris, probably the last update, you guys talked about the last page of the matters under action, how we talked about the beach development process and the road stopping. I did follow up again with our property team, and obviously over the last 4 or 5 months, they have been struggling with sort of staff numbers, but that's coming back, and they've got more staff coming on board. So they've got a new staff member who joined last week, which is this stuff was on her list of things to do. And once the new parks team is up and running, so they've got the new parks manager who started last week, they'll keep in contact with me around the timeline for that, so I can have a definite some movement on that last page.
Oh, thanks, Samara. That's great.
Yeah.
Don't know what we do without you. You're not allowed to leave ever.
Look at Janice's finger. She just did the finger. A nice finger though. Sorry, it was not the finger.
Well, that's sort of, I've come to the end of the agenda and look at the time. Goodness gracious me, it hasn't even been an hour. Does anybody have anything else they would like to discuss or talk about or cover off before we close the meeting? Just to say that whilst we're going through this type of meeting and everything, if anybody has anything that they need to discuss or want to meet on, just a phone call away or a text away, and perhaps we could all get together for a coffee at some stage, because I think we're still allowed to do that, and maybe have a bit of an informal chat about, before we have our next meeting, about how we're going to set it up. This was pretty much a trial run, and I think it's gone reasonably okay, mainly because the agenda was nice and small. Thank you, Samara and Janice. But we may end up having presentations or something at the next one, which may be unavoidable, and that needs to run as smoothly as possible. So if anybody has any suggestions, or if you just want to have a chat, give me a buzz and we can organise something.
So I think, Chris, we are scheduled to have Pika Pika to Ōtaki come and do a presentation at the next meeting. So we can work with them there. We do have the know-how to actually get them on board and share screens so they can do a presentation. So we can work on that. And also just a bit about grant applications. When you do receive the grant applications and having a look through it, if you do have any questions, don't hesitate to email or call me, because I can sometimes, if we don't have the person coming to the meeting, I can follow up prior to the meeting. Or if you'd like to, as a board member, you do have the option of ringing them and just following up on the grant application, and you had a couple of questions. So you can do that too. I see Shelley and James have both got their hands up.
Right.
So
Shelley, you go first, Shelley.
Sorry, yeah, I was just going to ask if we're going to have a next meeting of briefing or some kind of information about the annual plan process. Janice, I'm sure we will, because you will have had your meetings by then, but I can't make the meeting, so.
Janice.
Sorry, my mouse keeps disappearing on me and I can't unmute myself. I imagine that there is a plan already for some information out for community boards. I just don't know what that looks like. I suspect it'll be included in the conversation at the briefing this coming week, but I can give you an update offline about what that's going to look like. Councillor Coots, of course, may choose to update you as well in the meantime.
Right, James. Thank you, Janice.
I saw in the chat there, Shelley had not received my report back. I normally send that to Samara, and then as the keeper of all things council, she then keeps a record of it and sends it out to the community board. And I see that she's done that during the course of this meeting. So you should all have a copy of it. And as it says in the report back, if you have any questions, feel free to call me.
Thank you, James. Right. Anybody else have anything they would like to discuss, or any queries, questions? No? Okay. Well, with that, I declare the meeting closed at 8:10. Oh,
Thank you, everyone.
Yes.
Thanks,
Goodbye.
everyone.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.